Thanks for joining us here. Dave and I are going to talk about how you can take a job in HTM and make it to a career, what the differences are, some steps that you guys can take, and just the process overall to have a fulfilling career as opposed to just going a job. So years ago, there was a really terrible movie that I watched, and it's called Under Siege 2. And there was a line that stood out for me, and I still remember it today. It says, "Chance favors the prepared mind." And I think that's poignant today because life is going to present you guys a lot of small opportunities. They might be obvious, they might not be so obvious, but if you're prepared for it, you can take advantage of it. So let's take a stroll down memory lane here. Probably everybody here knows Dave. If you don't know Dave, I'd be shocked. Dave, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Dave Scott. I started in biomed as a military biomed. So I had a sheet that I filled out and it had a bunch of choices on there, and the military picked that choice for me. And I'm kind of glad I got that, and it's probably the best one I probably could have gotten out of the ones that I had. And been working now 36 years now in biomed, so it's been a little while. And obviously it's my career, and I never really viewed it as a job, but I started out as a military tech for 8 years in their active duty and reserves. So, and I still, surprisingly, I know a lot of people, when I tell them this, I still stay in touch with some of my classmates from biomed school 36 years ago. So we still talk fairly often, every night, like at least a few times a year. So
having worked with you for the last 6 years, I feel like I know some of your classmates too. So, and I took a different route. So I started out my career in nuclear power, and that all changed drastically in late 2011 when there was a tsunami that hit Japan. And I was 28 years old at the time, and I saw the writing on the wall. The world kind of soured on nuclear power, and I needed to transition into something different. And chance just happened to present itself, and I was reached out to by a company that manufactured laboratory equipment, and they were an up-and-coming company, and they were looking for people with kind of non-traditional backgrounds because they felt that they brought a lot of different diversity to the role. And I worked for a company called Sysmex for 9 years. And then when I was doing an installation at UCHealth Highlands Ranch Hospital, one of the managers had reached out to me and said, "Hey, Brad, I know you just had a baby. How's it going?" I said, field service roles are really challenging when you have a newborn. And I was the senior engineer at the time, and I had just done a 5-day stint out in North Platte, Nebraska. And I came home, and my wife said, it's really hard without you being here. And that was just a big flag because I feel like field service engineers have some of the highest divorce rates in the world. And again, chance prepared itself. Sarah Miller was the director of the lab at the time, this new Highlands Ranch Hospital. And again, it just 6 years later, here I am still with UCHealth. I started as a biomed equipment technician 1, and now I've moved up into a supervisory role. And talking to all of you guys here, so it's pretty interesting how your career path can shift and change in just a few years.
Pay, and I feel like it's kind of like your full-time.
It's funny when I look back at it, I think of like all the jobs that I've had. I really think about it. I think it's like 9 or 10. I worked at Sam's Club. I worked at Steak and Shake for 2 days. 2 days working at Steak and Shake. I was like, I'm never working at a fast food restaurant again. I worked at restaurants. I worked at grocery stores. I worked at Circuit City. Who remembers that? That went out of business.
I used to be a sandwich artist.
There you go.
Subway.
And I think ultimately I was supposed to end up in healthcare technology, which is where I'm at today. So what's a career? I think a career is more of a lifelong pursuit. It's a passion. Yes, we make money. Yes, we get paid for what we do, but it's something that we want to continue throughout our life. It's kind of like our professional journey, professional life. And a career, we kind of touched on them a little bit here.
Not really as much highly educated or high requirements to do a job as compared to a career.
Yeah. Has anybody worked at a restaurant as a server? you have to watch a video on like your first day in a back room sitting on a chair? It's like an hour-long video. It's absolutely the worst. That was my training to be a server. I remember it fondly. If you've ever watched Waiting, they kind of capture that magic. But it was 1 hour to do your job for the rest of the day. Like it was terrible. But when you have a career, it's continuous education. It's continuous self-improvement. You know, you can do higher education. You can do workshops. You can do self-improvement.
You can do the MD mixer.
You can do an MD mixer.
HTM mixer.
HTM mixer. You can
All of you are here today.
But yeah, you're always just trying to improve yourself. You know, you don't just do one thing and then stop. You don't watch that 1 hour video and then you're good to go. There's always something new to learn. There's always something better to have. There are educational differences when it comes to having a job versus a career.
A job, you have required educational foundation, maybe just high school diploma or GED. Not a really in-depth hour video that Brad watched to be a server as an example.
Oh, it was so awful. It was so terrible. You know, and there's a lot of common life skills that you guys learn when you just have a job. I think serving was wonderful and everybody should do it if you have kids, because it teaches you about things like customer service, which kind of leads into your career. But career, you often pursue higher level education. So it might be a college degree or college degrees. You know, Dave mentioned his military training. I think that is probably better than the education that a lot of colleges can offer, specifically when it comes to biomed, because of the in-depth nature that it has. You can achieve and go for professional certifications. Was it Dustin's presentation?
Dustin's right here.
Where's Dustin?
Dustin's like, don't call me out.
Dustin had spoken about all the certifications. Was anybody in that class? Those are things that you can
the slide you had at the end was really good with all the IT certifications and all the other project management, and I really like that slide.
Yeah,
we might borrow it from you sometime.
We could probably use it here. But there's also HTM specific training that you can have. You know, you talked about IT and networking certifications. A big emerging field right now is cybersecurity. That's something that I think touches base with HTM and biomed almost intricately here. You can focus on specific modalities. You can do anesthesia machines, ventilators. I think the opportunities are endless when it comes to our field. So why should you choose a career over a job? Someone like myself and Dave, we're involved in the hiring process with new teams, experienced technicians. We're always looking to find people who are career focused. We don't want to find somebody that is just here for a little bit and then it's going to move on to the next thing, because we're going to take time and we're going to take resources to invest in grow your career. That takes time. That takes, if you're here for just a short amount of time, that's wasted money. So we're always looking for people who are looking for improvement. Dave?
Investing in yourself as well as your employer. I always feel like your employer wants, if they see you making an effort to invest in yourself, they're going to want to invest in you back. It's kind of a two-way street there, like where someone that just shows up for their job and they're really like, they don't want to go any above and beyond at all, they're really probably not going to be the one that the employer is going to want to invest in. They're going to want people that are investing in themselves, and they see that effort on their part and they make the effort on their employer's part.
When I came on board, Dave was hired after me, and being new in the biomed field, I had a lot of technical experience with my time at Sysmex. I didn't have a lot of hospital experience. I felt Dave was intricate in saying, you need to start investing in yourself. And he's part of the reason that I got my friends. Take it in this, think about investing in yourself. Away from his wrenchy, which he didn't bring. I'm a little bit upset that he didn't bring his wrenchy.
I didn't want to show off. I didn't want to show off too much.
I wanted him to
I talked to my wife
neck
and she
like
said,
Flavor
Dave, that's a little
Flav.
too much. So I left it at home.
But you know, if Dave looks back at his career from when he first started to where he's at now, I know he's proud of what he's done, and he should be. And I think anybody here can be proud of seeing themselves grow. And I hate to say it, it's the root of all evil, but as your career grows, your potential earnings grow. Who's from Colorado? Is this a cheap state to live in, or is this an expensive state to live in? If I asked this question 10 years ago, it would have had a different answer. But with all of the people that moved here, it's very expensive to live here. And as your career grows, you have more opportunities. You get to take better vacations. You get to do more fun things, maybe drive a better car if that's your thing. I hate to say it, it's the root of all evil, but it is a outcome of growing your career.
It's kind of that bottom line that you're always looking at when you decide to invest in yourself. You go, oh, and along the way, it's going to result in something bigger down the line.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how do you start your career? I think that's a great question, and it's a great place to start.
Positions in clinical engineering department. We have a lot of them. And they're probably, as I go through the list, if you guys know of other positions, I know there's newer positions that maybe are like a hybrid position too. Biomed 1, Biomed 2, Biomed 3. Everybody knows those. We call them different in ours at UCHealth where we work at. We're associate, intermediate, and senior, we call it, but it's still Biomed 1, 2, 3. Imaging engineer, specialist, clinical engineer, supervisor, manager, director, and vice president. We didn't really get into like, I guess we kind of consider like imaging engineer and specialist. Maybe those are two different, or maybe the same. We talked a little bit about cybersecurity. Maybe does anybody have a cyber position where you're at? Yeah, you do? What is your job? Or do you do that cyber position?
Yeah, so I oversee cybersecurity with Kaiser.
Oh, nice.
Built grouping that's separate from HTM, but we also work hand in hand with them.
Do you work with Micah Brown? Do you work with Micah Brown, Kaiser? No? Oh, okay. Okay. He's a clinical engineer. Okay. Yeah, my son, I was talking to Chris before class. My son does cybersecurity in the Navy, and this is his 17th year in the Navy. He joined the Navy 17 years ago. He told me what he was going to be doing, and I was like, what is that? You know, I had no idea. And now all these years later, I'm like, wow, how did he know that? He's so smart. You know, and I think maybe it was just by chance that he got into that, but you guys work together kind of? And you're at Kaiser also? Okay. I know the VA has a big cyber division too. Yeah, Keith.
You asked about potentially different roles.
Yeah.
Based on the size of the organization, facility, organization, whatever. Quality assurance is something that can creep in too. So BMET 1 may want to branch into the quality department. Some of the larger hospitals have to do.
What about project manager? Does anybody have project managers at their department? Yeah. Yeah, project manager. Do you have people that have PMP certification? Do you have people that have PM? Oh, okay. PMP. Oh, wow.
At UCHealth, we have hybrid roles with IT, where people more specialized towards the IT side of aspects. We have a specific person just for the OR that serves them. We have someone that takes care of our focal point stuff at Philips. So there's a lot of different positions in HTM that are just not the traditional biomedical equipment technician roles.
I like doing presentations like this to hear what everybody else has, because some of the stuff I'm like, wow, that's cool. I never even thought of that, you know, like what you're saying.
Yeah, I wish our senior director and VP were in here. We could say, oh, project manager. We'd love one of those. It seems to be a hybrid role.
Being from Colorado, does anybody know who Cordell Stewart is?
Yes.
Played at CU. They called him Slash in the NFL. I feel like some people in biomed, like I'm looking at Gary, he's got a slash role, like supervisor slash project manager slash lead tech slash whatever else. Like sometimes you don't fit into maybe one of these exact roles, but you have several roles.
But yeah, these are just some of the opportunities that are out there when you actually start to pursue a career instead of your job. And these different positions definitely have different educational requirements, and that can depend on the facility. There are some hard requirements for certain facilities. So at UCHealth, for a director level position, you have to have certain levels of college education, but it kind of varies based on the facility. So we have a technician now that just started who has a certificate in, I believe, electronics engineering, and he was easily hired into a bio to run role.
We also have a guy that started as a BMET 1 as a CAPT certification, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Absolutely. We have a couple of technicians. Eric is one of ours here that has an AAS degree, or Dave, which has biomed or military training. I don't know if any of the other UC. Taylor has an AAS. Jeff is a military trained and an AAS. Gary, there you go. And Jeff was a former supervisor. Gary is a current supervisor. Some of us have bachelor's degrees, and I think that qualifies you, at least in our department, to be leader. Some facilities have what are called clinical engineers, which is a little bit more of a specialized role, where they're more in terms of project management, and they're kind of working with the leadership roles to implement policies and things of that nature. But a bachelor's degree you can definitely be qualified for a BMET 1, 2, or 3, or for a leadership role. And then if you want to pursue a lot further education, maybe you want to get a master's degree, an MS or an MBA or an MHA, that will qualify you to be a clinical engineer or definitely something in the leadership role.
One of my friends, he used to be a chief of operations at a company here in Denver, but he didn't have a degree, he had an associate degree. And I remember when he got into like higher up positions, I'm like, Brad knows him too, Ken. He said, I'm going back to school to get my piece of paper so I can be in this position. And he said, I have to check those boxes. And I feel like sometimes your degree doesn't always have to do with like exactly what you do. Maybe you have a degree in some bachelor's degree in something unrelated to biomed, but it's like sometimes one of the boxes that you need to have checked to get into those higher level positions. Same with master's degree. I know a lot of biomed people that have master's degrees in business, which, I mean, if you think of a biomed operation, it is kind of a business, so it makes sense. But I've met people that have degrees all across the board that it's kind of, as he said, checking that box, getting that piece of paper.
So how do you get more educated? I think that's a great question. I came from a family where nobody went to college, so when I asked my parents these questions, they literally had no idea. So I think Dave and I will talk about that a little bit here. I think one of the first things that you need to look into is, does your company offer tuition reimbursements? Sorry, my slides kind of went a little funky here.
Your parents both were apprentice program though, right?
So
Journeyman?
both of my parents were construction workers. My father was a retired sprinkler fitter, so the sprinklers that were in the buildings, and my mother was a retired electrician.
So they had some kind of formal education, like
Absolutely.
a program they went through.
They went through
just
a 5-year
little
apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So yeah, does your company offer tuition reimbursement? Are you using it? I think it's a great place to start. So at UCHealth, they offer $6,000 a year for further education. And Dave and I just recently have met with our chief diversity officer, and we found out that UCHealth offers HTM field programs that are fully covered by UCHealth. It's called the Ascend program. Now, it's not directly related to biomed, but it does have access.
Nursing is a big one.
Yep.
That does the Ascend program.
So
they started out as a medical assistant and work up to an RN.
Yep.
And they pretty much pay, because RN jobs are in such demand, they pretty much pay their whole entire education for them.
Yeah, so it's something to look into if you guys are looking to further your education and further your career. And oftentimes it requires a time commitment afterwards. The employer isn't just going to invest in you and then you can just take off and go bring it somewhere else. So it might be a 2 or a 3-year requirement, but if you were to reach out to your HR department or someone in your leadership, they can point you in the right direction.
I feel like especially if you're younger and you have no kids and no commitments as much in your life, that you should be taking advantage of getting as much education as you can and having your employer pay for it. And if you come into biomed or HTM field and maybe you don't have, maybe you just have that CABT or you have some relevant experience and you get hired, you should take advantage of whatever education you can get for free and whatever reimbursement you can get for free. And if you're not using it, you're kind of losing, in this case, $6,000 a year, you're losing by not doing that. So I feel like as you get older and you get more commitments and more like stuff going on in your life, you might not have as much time to do that. But when you're younger and your employer has that, it's definitely something you should take advantage of.
Has anybody here utilized that through an employer? There we go. We've got a few people. So please take advantage of it. Like they said, it's essentially free money just sitting there for you to use. There are places that you could look into to utilize this tuition. So we have some representatives here from the College of Biomedical Technology. If you all can raise your hand. They have a booth here. If you have any questions, please reach out to them.
Yeah, trade shows right after this, so
Yeah.
stop by and see them. And they have online courses for healthcare technology management.
Yep.
And then RSTI, they have a booth in the trade show also, Radiological Servicing Technician Institute. Is that what it? I'm pretty sure that's Technical Institute. They've been around forever, training people in imaging, and sometimes you can use reimbursement money to go to somewhere like RSTI. They also take like GI Bill money. So I know people that have used their GI Bill. That's a military thing, the GI Bill. Ex-military, if you have GI Bill, you know what I'm talking about, but they take GI Bill money too. And then traditional universities locally, like I said, sometimes it's checking that box to have that piece of paper that you move into higher up positions.
What else can you do? You can also go to vendor specific training. Has anybody here gone to vendor specific training? I know I have. Perfect. I love seeing it. So there's all sorts of options out there. You know, maybe there's a team or somebody left and then you can fill into that role, or you're just looking to make yourself more valuable, whether it is to your employer or to a future employer. So you can go to training for anesthesia machines. You can go to training for ventilators. Where's Dean? Dean is our surgical.
Dean goes to training for everything.
I was going to say, Dean's been in anesthesia training, OR integration, beds, surgical tables. I mean,
Dean takes all of our training slots at every school at UCHealth.
he has so many things on his wall. It's obnoxious.
He has his wallpaper, his
certificates are.
training certificates.
It really is. But think of the value that to his department and the value that he has for himself because of all of this knowledge that's bringing that he's acquired.
Definitely. Dean
is, hold on.
Dean's one of the hardest working
Dean is
people in our
never
department.
not at work.
Dean loves to be at work.
Dean answers
More than anybody
emails
else.
on PTO. He answers calls on PTO.
I think Dean's already been FaceTiming people today, like in the OR when he's gone today. He's already been FaceTiming people.
You know, but
So
Dean is one of the most valuable members of our team, and it's because he's taken the time to invest in himself to go to these trainings.
when I started at UCHealth, Dean didn't have his certification. And were you an associate tech, Dean, or Tech 1 when I started? Yeah. And then he came there and he's like, Dave, I want to take certification. And he went from associate to intermediate to senior, like probably within a year, huh, Dean? It was like really fast. He's been working in the field a long time. Very valuable member of our team and someone that I use as a reason, but Dean's a very resource often.
I think
And
we
I'm
all
very
use Dean as a
lucky to
resource.
have him to help me.
And we want you to advocate for yourself when you go to vendor training. How can they do that?
So one of the things that you want to do when you're going like to go to vendor training is you want to make it easy for your boss to make a decision. So you want to put together, and I see Claire in the back, we talked about this. Claire and I just did a presentation at MD Expo in California, and I was talking to Claire about this exact same thing, but advancing your career. You want to make it easy for your boss. You want to make it a yes answer. So what you want to do is get the course cost of the flight or round trip airfare, whatever your transportation costs, which is maybe a rental car, Uber, whatever, et cetera, taxi cab, if anybody still takes taxi. Cost estimate for food. Maybe there's per area, or you can estimate how much DM in that area, or maybe how much it's going to be hotel costs, other expenses to your boss, why you should go. So to make the decision easy yes for your boss. So that's kind of some background on going to manufacturer, any kind of vendor training. Yeah, in the back. Well, I found that a lot of bosses are very busy, and if you take your own career into your own hands, the boss is going to look at that more as this person really wants to do this, and this is a person that I'd really like them to do this, instead of relying on the boss for everything. I mean, like the bosses have, maybe they have 10 people, 15 people, 20 people that they don't have the time to do that for every person in their department. So I mean, I think people that take the initiative maybe get to the front of the line more than the people that are waiting for someone else to take the initiative. Yeah, Carol.
Well, I'm gonna say, you'll be the boss of the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the boss's job.
Right. Mark, do you ever have any people that do this and come to you and say, hey, I'd like to do this and here's why?
The technicians may or may not help, but it's the second level manager's responsibility to deliver the information to me with the present value and ROI.
And sometimes people don't even, maybe the boss doesn't realize maybe that's their in doesn't even realize that this is something that they're interested in, you know, and maybe the a different. They might say, well, you took the initiative to do this.
You'll be the kind of bosses that we all want.
Right.
You'll be the boss. You'll be a leader.
Right.
Yeah, my directors, it's their responsibility to manage this. They need, they have to be looking at their demands and where they're spending money on vendors and finding ways to reduce that demand.
That was one of the classes this morning, right? The very first this morning was kind of talking about taking stuff off contracts and
Yeah.
how to get a self-service model.
If my directors weren't doing this, they're not gonna be working.
To build on your career thing too, if your company sends you to a training, they expect you to work on that. If you're going to training, to put it on your resume, they're probably not gonna send you to a second training. So if
You just
go
lost your chance, huh?
Work on it and show other people, you know, you have to show a little appreciation that they sent you.
Yeah.
Or that's
Agree.
your one and only training.
And Dean and I can speak to it. Striker training is great because it's right next to Hard 8 Barbecue, which is world class. And I'm from Chicago. There's a Portillo's not too far from there either. So a lot of good food in that area.
See, and I wouldn't send you. I usually like that. But the first thing out of your mouth is, I don't want to hear about how to.
Why is that?
It might be the second thing. Well, because I want to see the value that they think they gain from
Sure.
training.
Sure. So what are other ways that you can stand out from the crowd? You know, we've talked about education, we've talked about vendor training. How about professional certification? Does anybody here have professional certification? Perfect. I love seeing it. How many CBETs do we have in the room? How many of you all know Dave? Everybody's got their hand up from that. So, you're right, C-Res is in there. You know, it's just, I'm not in imaging, so it wasn't one of the things that I thought about.
Yeah, we
but
didn't
there
put that one in there.
are all sorts of different professional certifications. And I'm going to let Dave talk about this because I know this is something that he's extremely passionate
I
about.
think we have a slide on requirements later.
too.
So CAPT is a newer certification, and the CAPT is kind of nice because all you need is a GE. Or high school diploma, and before I said it's 100 questions, timed for 2 hours, and it's good for 5 years. It's kind of your foot in the door is where I look at. He came from sterile processing. We never even talked to T stuff all on his own, and that was in itself impressive to us.
Yeah.
And we had a job opening. We were looking at 2 candidates who were kind of the finalists. We didn't end up hiring the first time, but then when we had another job opening, we said, hey, what's that guy in sterile processing? We did contact, he didn't have any experience. I in sterile processing that has CAPT.
Yep.
We got this opening. Let's talk to him again and see if he's still interested. And he's gotten, I think he has some IT certifications now too that
He's working on
on.
his S+ certification, and we actually just recently promoted him
Yeah,
to
he
a
just
level
recently
2 tech.
got to level 2
And
tech.
I'll be honest, the CAPT was kind of the sterling silver thing that we were looking at because we realized that he's investing in himself and he's talking to us in leadership about this.
To us, the most impressive thing was he figured it all out on his own and did it all on, a lot of time people will come to us in biomed and they'll say, oh, I work at the whatever, like there's been guys at the dock, a few people from the service, like the loading dock. How can I get into biomed? Well, there's this certification called CAPT, and we tell them a little bit about it and how to find it, but we're not going to like do everything for them. If they really want it, they're going to figure it out themselves. He figured it all out all on his own without even talking to us.
Yep.
So that was impressive to us in the first place. And now he's doing these IT certifications, but he's already looking at doing a CBET.
Yep.
He doesn't have formal education in biomed, but he's working on the certification path instead of like his formal education path as much. And like I said it's easier to go to school when you don't have kids and don't have a family. He has 4 kids.
Yep.
And they play soccer. And he's a soccer dad, and he coaches soccer too, and plays. I think he used to play semi-professional soccer himself. So pretty impressive guy. I mean, we're really happy to have him, and
Very happy.
he's like kind of the example of what to do to jumpstart your career.
Yeah, it's a non-traditional path. And he's using all the avenues that are open to him.
CBET, Certified Biomedical Equipment Technician. And I probably don't even need to talk about it, but high level, it's a higher level than this CABT, and more knowledge and more skills in HTM to be able to do it. 3-hour exam, 165 questions, 70% to pass. Often required for senior level or BMET 3 positions. Going back a few years, there were some hospitals that were acquired in South Texas, and there's probably about 8 or 10 people in the CBET review that we did, and they it was back when it was still run by CABMET. They told me, Dave, we got acquired. We used to work for GE. We were senior techs there, hired to be a CBET, and our new director gave us money for your class and money for the test. Depending on passing, we're going to keep our job as this level 3, or we're going to move down to level 2. So no pressure there or anything. I always tell people it's better to get your CBT before you need it, but these guys didn't need it in their previous job, but you never know, I guess, what's going to come in your career, what's going to happen. It's always good to plan ahead and have it before you need. But I think they all ended up passing, but that was something that I think they didn't expect. Always good to look at that, and always kind of try to work towards the next step in your career.
Chance favors the prepared mind. Those guys
Right.
were prepared.
Right.
So there are some requirements for the CBET.
That was Chris Nowak. You guys probably know.
So these are the requirements that are for the CBET. An associate's degree or higher in biomedical equipment technology, or in 2 full years of BMET. And this is taken directly from the AME website. There's a lot of ors in here. Or Dave's traditional route, the completion of a U.S. military biomedical equipment technology program, and 2 technology in 3 years, the full-time of our techs. This is where Redwan is working towards his 4
It's
year.
4 years. Yeah. He's
So
the one that started out as CABT, and he's working to.
there's also a CHTM. I don't see, does anybody in here have their CHTM? There we go.
Quite
We
a
got
few
people with
people, yeah.
certifications. I love it. So this is a certified care technology manager. So this is if you're looking to
had certified biomedical equipment technician on their resume, and go on the AME website and look it up, and their name wasn't listed there. And when confronted, they said, "Oh, we're working on getting it reinstated." If it drops, they have to retake the test. On that like 3-month window where they can pay their extra money and get it reinstated. So it ended up being a person like, "Oh, look at this person. We have the certified tech," to being, we don't really know if we want to talk to this person because they lied on their resume.
And it was line 1 of the resume. So it was the first entry in there. It's very disingenuous.
It was one of those people that Brad, whenever he sees people, "Dave, do you know this person?" And I said, "No, I don't. Let's look them up on the AME website. You know, like they're certified." "Oh, they're not even listed. What's going on?" You know? And that was a big black eye. So something that you never want to fake is lying on your resume, and something especially like that that's easy to look up. other thing about CHTM, and those of you that have taken it, is it 3 years experience you have to be in working in a management role? 3 years? Yeah, yeah.
So you can be that are, let's say, manager or supervisor.
Like a lead tech or something like, yeah.
Lead tech or.
Okay.
Project manager.
So there's requirements for each one of these certifications pretty much. Okay. We didn't have that on that slide, but
Sure. There's also a certified clinical engineer. The requirements for this are very high.
Carol can,
There we go.
Carol's the expert on CCE. No? Carol is a CCE, but there's 2 parts to the exam. There's a written part and an oral part, and there's actually a board of people that really know what they're talking about that will call you to that board and ask you questions, and they'll put you on the spot. It's not an easy test.
If it's something you want to pursue, please look it up online. Google has all the answers that you could ever need.
And ACCE,
On the
American College of
requirements,
Clinical Engineers.
on the requirements for the CCE.
Yeah, I would reach out to the ACC or a certified clinical engineer.
Does University of Connecticut, do you teach your students kind of towards that when you're, or encourage them to do that when they graduate?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very much built to get them the broad base that they will need, but there are, as you said, work so long before you can take a written one. You have to work so long.
Oh, okay.
It is like a 3 or 4.
Not right out of school.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay,
no.
right.
So it usually was a 3-day wait. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Carol.
So what else can you do? And Dave really kind of using that word objectively is plan your career. Have an idea. We're not going to remember them. We need to write them down. We need to capture them. When we were studying for the CBET exam, what was really helpful for us was to write out the questions physically on a postcard.
3x5
A note
recipe
card.
cards. Yeah, right.
Because as you write it down, for some reason your mind remembers it better, and it's just psychology. If you think about it, you're going to forget about it, but if you write it down, you're going to remember it. And when you're thinking about this, I want you guys to be open to new things. One of the most difficult parts I found for this job is I had to step out of my comfort zone. So you get a department, you get familiar with the equipment, you get familiar with the people, you get familiar with the problems, and you get to a point where you're really good at what you do. I don't want to use complacent, but you're just very, very comfortable. Your PM list is easily managed. You know which PMs are coming up when, you know who to talk to when you have a problem. You've built a good relationship with them, but then you're stuck there. If you step out of that comfort zone and you try something new, that's when your career is going to grow.
And sometimes that's a new job too, like going from one job to another job.
Absolutely.
And I hate to say it, but if you're new in your career, sometimes jumping from job to job is maybe the fastest way to get ahead.
It seems that way in the modern world. I
And
really
that seems
don't
like,
it.
yeah, a lot of younger people, that's how they get ahead, is going from one job to another job.
But for me in particular,
Eric's laughing at me.
I don't really like talking to random people. So presenting is perfectly fine, but this, what's happening afterwards? Is it the happy hour? I tend to steer clear of those things. I'm like a mild introvert, but I'm stepping out of my comfort zone to try to reach out to people during this HTM mixer. So for me, this is very, very challenging. I've always been the guy that leaves and goes golfing after the classes are over. I don't have any tee times booked for later today, even though there is an absolutely beautiful golf course out there. So try to step out of your comfort zone.
One of the things, this might also be called goals. You know,
Yeah.
like Brad said, writing them down. So it's always something that you're working towards.
Yeah.
In your career path.
And we've got a slide coming up for that. What else can you do? You can attend HTM mixers, CABMET meetings. It's incredible who you might run into or who you might meet and how that can change the trajectory of your career. I'm thinking to myself, when I was talking to Sarah, she just asked, how's it going with the newborn? That was a divergence in my life, was from there. And that never would have happened if I just walked up to her and just said, hey, how's it going? So you'd be amazed at what can happen with your career if you just reach out to people, talk to people, try to meet new people.
One of the other surprising things, CABMET or biomed associations, those of you that know me for a while know that I was the president of CABMET, vice president, a board member. But when I did that, I didn't originally think, I just thought, oh, I'll do this because I was encouraged by someone else, who the president at the time, Dave, you should be the vice president. And he encouraged me to do that. I was like, okay, this sounds good. I didn't realize what it would lead to though. Like project management, I organized the symposium that we did. I had to do the budget. I had to do the vendors, all the vendor trade. I got to meet all the vendors from the trade show, signing them up of booths. It added a lot to my career stuff that I did. So I didn't initially do that because of that. I didn't see that in it. I was thinking, well, he's encouraged me to do it. And I feel like that person, his name is Tim Keenan. He's kind of been very influential in my career, like from the back, like pushing me, giving me the confidence. And sometimes that's all it takes, is like someone else to give you the confidence to do the stuff that you've done, and maybe pushing you along the way, and having someone in your corner that kind of backed you. And I remember the very first time CABMET meeting, there probably was maybe this many people, and I was only 30 something. And I went there, and people, there was a lot of people that were older, maybe as old as my parents in the room. And I was super scared because I thought, they're all going to think I'm an idiot. You know, I'm going to get up there and try to talk in front of these people. And they've been doing this so long, and I've been doing it only a few years. And Tim told me, Dave, don't worry about it. You know, like, you're the one that's up there, not them. So, you know, you haven't already have it one step up on them, you know. And it took Tim telling me that to be able to realize that, because I didn't realize it on my own. So I was just super scared. And sometimes having someone like that in your corner, and through Biomed Association, that's where I met Tim at. And that's kind of, I feel like he's a big driving force in a lot of stuff I've done in my career. And I give him a lot of credit for kind of being in my corner and helping me out along the way.
And we already talked about it briefly, but think about where you want your career to go. Write it down. So the next slide is going to talk about a journal, and we're going to go a little bit more in depth. So this was something that Dave brought to my attention, and I've actually started handing it out to our new hire associate techs. And some of the intermediate techs have taken it as well, because our career is always evolving, and we want to be able to capture that stuff and write it down. We're not going to remember it. I'm telling you, I don't care how good your memory is.
No.
You're not going to remember it.
The older you get, the more or less you remember it too.
Exactly. So what kind of things do we want to capture? We want to capture what kind of training we've learned. Is it on-the-job training? Did we work on a new piece of equipment? Let's write it down. So in
Not just your certificates from that class that you went to.
Yeah.
This is day-to-day stuff.
What kind of vendor trainings have you attended? What kind of difficult problems have you worked on? Let's say it took you 2 or 3 days to fix the problem. If you write that down, you're going to remember it for the next time. Or you can share it with your teammate when they call you and say, oh, I'm working on this problem and I don't know what to do. And you're going to go, oh, I swear I worked on something like that 2 years ago. You're going to flip through your book. There's the answer for you.
Or your document in your computer.
Yeah.
Claire, does this sound familiar? Claire and I did, like I said, we did presentation at MD Expo, but Claire has a file like that she's created for each make and model. And she kind of has notes on each make and model, and like, you have PM parts and some part numbers in there, and your ledger of equipment that you've worked on.
I utilize OneNote for the exact same situation. So whatever new hires want is back there. And I just call it associate stuff, and it has all the pumps that we work on. Same. It just makes it easy to reference. Write down. Other things, talk about victories that you've had in the field. Write those down there. And the reason why I want you guys to write those down is because when you come into a career conversations, you can bring that to your leader and say, hey, look at what I've done this year. Look at how I've grown. Look at where my career trajectory is taking me. And maybe you'll be the next person considered for a promotion.
At UCHealth, we have, it's called Career Conversations. And it's kind of like we do our self-eval. And I have a document, I shared it with Brad. I have a document that I do that I try to write down at least one month. It might be a project, or it might be, you know, one of my ICUs moved and they had construction and I had to take everything out, put it into storage, put everything back. When they moved back, they kind of did the game thing. They did side. And we're still like Shell did this, and they're in June, they're coming back, moving back into the one place. But even this presentation, sometimes I get more than the year. What did I do? But I don't remember all of it. And now I have a document I can just copy it and I do my career conversation.
And we as leaders don't have the availability to see all those things. So if you have it written down and captured somewhere, it's very easy to share. And if you're going for a new job, you can plop down this book and say, here's all the stuff that I've worked on. It's a record of all of my past experiences. It looks really good when you come in and interview.
I can tell you that if we had an applicant that did that, I'd be very impressed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's say you're feeling stuck. You're complacent, you're comfortable with where you're at. What can you do? Look to see a job that no one else wants to do. So me personally, I absolutely hate working on Belmont rapid infusers. It is the bane of my existence. Dave kind of feels the same way. Water just seems to spill everywhere.
Everything with water, I seem to be able to spill everywhere.
I hate working on them. So if somebody wants to work on them for me, I will pay them money to go do them. But look for things that people don't want to do. It's an opportunity for you to grow. Dave?
Talk to more experienced technicians for ideas, or maybe shadow them or ask them if you can help them with their job. Looking in the back at Brian, I know that's kind of how you started, isn't it, Brian, in working in cath labs, like kind of shadowing other people? Yeah.
I feel very grateful for Dave having been sat next to me when he came on board at UCHealth, because I could just ask him questions. Hey, what should I do with this? Where should I go with that? I think it took till like day 2 when he started talking about the CBET stuff.
Day 2.
Maybe day 1. Talk about your stagnation with your supervisors. Express to them that, hey, I feel stuck, I feel complacent, I'm getting bored. What can I do to grow? And they'll have some ideas and some opportunities for you. Change departments with a colleague. That's a hard one to do because, again, somebody might be entrenched in their department and they really don't want to get rid of it, but ask around. I think it was Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of shots you don't take. I think there's a Michael Scott comment out there too that relates to that. I've never seen The Office.
I always think too, like if you're getting a new piece of equipment or new technology in your hospital, I want to be the one that's doing the initial inspections and knows about it when it's coming in. I want to be like the person that learns it first, so then I can kind of start building ahead of everybody else and be that go-to person on the team that people go, oh, you know, that new whatever it is, Dave knows about that, you know, and then you kind of become that person just by the fact that you took the initiative to learn it initially.
Yeah. And we already talked about it, but scheduled training in a modality you're not familiar with. Like Dave said, it might be something new that came in. It might be something that you saw in passing. You're like, that looks kind of cool. I want to learn more about that. But again, we're always just trying to evolve, educate, educate, educate. So I don't know if they're fun topics, but just from the crowd, is there anything you guys have done that we haven't captured that you think can help make you stand out from everyone else?
Will treat you better if they know that you have an interest in what they do and you consciously make an effort to be more valuable at that point. We advertised a little bit for College of Biomed Equipment Technology, RSTI. Those of you that don't know Carol in the back of the room, she's at University of Connecticut and teaches in the certified or the clinical engineering program. So if that's something you're looking at in your career further down the line or now, she'll be around here. The whole also has her own consulting company that does equipment planning, right? Is your main purpose of, yeah. So just to give a little advertisement to Carol in the back of the room. So
Dustin,
right.
you want to hear that?
But, you know, going back to the more money.
Great point. Great
Do
point.
we have what, one more slide? We don't want to keep everyone from lunch and the trade show. We only got a couple minutes left, so
we're finishing up here. So in
got
summary,
pretty much that it.
I mean, I think Dave and I both agree with it. Choosing to have a career instead of going to a job is a lifetime investment in yourself. You know, educate, educate, educate. It's a continuous, ongoing process. We should always be learning something. I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson said he wanted to learn something new every day and make a difference in someone's life. And I think the great part about healthcare is it's inherently altruistic. We are helping people who are in the most vulnerable positions. And then if we continually educate, we are basically satisfying his requirements. Educate, professional certifications, colleges, we got the CBET people over there, on the job training, specific vendor training. And Dustin was kind of talking about this. Your career isn't necessarily a destination, it's a journey. It's going to have ebbs and flows.
Ups and downs.
Good. Speaking to Dustin, when I left Sysmex, I left because I wanted the time. I wanted to be home with my son. Nobody ever is on their deathbed saying, I'm glad I made all that money. They say, I regret not spending that time with this person or this or that. So for me, I left because of the time. And it's made all the difference in the world. I still don't make as much money as I did at Sysmex, even 6 years later with promotions and growth. But it was the best decision I could have ever made for myself, for my family, and for my son. So embrace those ups and downs and document them. That's what that journal is for. And your career is something that's going to leave you emotionally, mentally, and hopefully financially fulfilled. I think you all are worth it. Yeah, we're right on time. I love it.
Like we know what we're doing, huh? Does anybody have questions? Anyone have questions?
Any questions before lunch?
All right.
Gonna duck here.
See you around
Who said they were gonna
at
throw
the
stuff?
mixer.